Hey, Mia,
Yeah.
what's the podcast about?
Oh God, Alice, I don't know. I think we'll probably discuss our transitions and our own experiences. I think what the podcast came out of our collaborations as writers, where we were focusing on personal experience, really personal storytelling, and back and forth. So comparing our experiences across generations.
Certainly, we're going to talk about the trans experience. Obviously, that's going to center the trans feminine experience because, duh, it's the only thing we know. It's going to frame that experience between me transitioning 3 decades ago and you transitioning now.
Right. 3 days ago.
Don't sell yourself short, girl. You've got a lovely ass.
You're listening to Alice and Mia, the show where we talk about cis stuff. Is that true? Trans stuff, women's stuff, and do our best to keep it easy on the heavy stuff. I'm Miriam Suzanne.
I'm Allison Washington.
And welcome to the conversation that centers your question and our very best attempt to come up with an answer.
Or failing that, at least a clever way of dodging the question.
Go to AllisonMia.com for more. Hey, Alice. It's good to talk to you. How are you?
I am shockingly anxious.
I
am as anxious as a trans girl stepping out in a skirt for the very first time.
Oh, that's anxious.
How are you, love?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I had a rough run-in with my brunch this morning, so...
With your brunch?
Yeah, it didn't settle well with my stomach, so...
You're supposed to kill it first.
I should have thought of that.
Does that mean you're going to be jumping up during the pod?
No, I think I've taken care of it, but we'll see.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Oh, God. So what are we doing today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you had some questions from the readers.
Yeah, so I reached out to my readers, and the first question I got was from Ariadne in Athens, Greece.
Hi, Ariadne.
Hello. No, that's not me. She will have said hello because I know she's listening. Ariadne identifies herself as, quote, a Greek trans woman who loves podcasts and dinosaurs. I happen to know that last as a shout out to Life of Bria by my friend Sabrina. Sabrina, if you're listening, you are adored by a very pretty Greek girl.
Oh.
Call me. Ariadne asks, are you ready?
Yes.
How did the two of you meet?
Good question. I think we were just fangirls for a while.
I think I fangirled on you and then you fangirled on me.
That's gross. Yeah, you found some of my writing online and you commented, and we started a conversation.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if you all get a chance, you should look over, what is it? Gender Fragments, I think it's called.
Yeah, Body and Gender Fragments.
Body and Gender Fragments. Absolutely fabulous piece.
Well, thank you.
That sort of made me fangirl all over you.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's how we met. And then I think you made the mistake of reading some of my stuff, and then we just got our own little kind of one-on-one going.
Sure.
So Ariadne also is asking another question,
okay.
which we're not going to be able to answer. She asks, what similarities and differences do you have? To which I want to respond, very.
Yeah.
So anyway, I want to answer Ariadne's question, but first we need to know who we are so that we can talk about how we're different.
So who are you?
Oh, I was afraid you would ask that. Yeah, actually, to get ready for the pod here, I took some notes.
Okay.
Because it's actually not that easy to say who you are.
Sure.
Have you ever tried?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about what it means to be a something, because we get into all these boxes, don't we?
Sure.
We're all very fond of saying, I can't be defined, I'm not a box. But it's like, if you don't know that I'm female, a trans woman, an older generation, blah, 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 then the things I have to say on this podcast don't really have very much meaning if you can't put them to context. But as soon as you list out a list of these sort of labels for yourself, they all turn out to be wrong.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Okay.
My name is Allison. I'm an older generation female, femme, AMAB, white, Western European, liberal, progressive, atheist, mentally and physically able post-transition trans woman of multiple nationality who is a straight, monogamous, submissive, and a survivor of assault, rape, and suicide.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a problem. There's a problem with all of that. None of that is true.
Right. None of it's true on its own. Is that what you mean?
There's a list of problems with it. Okay, so first of all, even if you shovel in all that female, femme, assigned male, and trans, it still doesn't completely explain my gender.
Sure.
Also, I don't identify as trans.
That's right. You say formerly trans. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's something we get to talk about, but that's not the end of the problems because you see, I'm not actually white.
Right.
I'm not culturally Western. Mm-hmm. I was not born in Europe.
Okay.
I said I was atheist, but I partially identify as Catholic.
That's a problem.
My philosophical practice is approximately Buddhist.
Uh-huh.
I said I'm mentally able, but I'm neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes sleep with non-men, which doesn't make me very straight necessarily. And in the end run of things, I'm really not all that sure I'm monogamist.
Right.
And as you know already, I don't always go by Allison.
That's right.
So I'm going to try again, okay?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Alice, an older generation, femme, cis-normative, white, indigenous American, Western European, multinational, liberal, progressive, atheist, Catholic, Buddhist, assigned male, post-transition, formerly transgender woman, and mother of one, who is neurodivergent and mentally and physically able, heteroflexible, polycurious, submissive, and a survivor of assault, rape, and suicide, and also dengue fever that one time.
That's a good addendum there at the end.
All subject to change.
Sure.
Mia Amore, what are your boxes?
Oh, I don't have them listed out in quite the same way. I for a long time identified as genderqueer.
What does that mean?
Yeah. What does that mean? To you? Mm-hmm. At that point, I felt like I didn't understand gender and I didn't know what mine was. And then I transitioned and I feel much more settled in it. I think I would still call myself a genderqueer trans woman. Lesbian, bisexual. I feel like those aren't simple. Or maybe pansexual, depending on how you want to use those words. I think I'm femme of center. I'm not high femme. I mean, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt.
No, but you sure clean up nice, girl.
Thank you. You do too. And I think more often than me.
Oh, I am uniformly femme.
Yeah.
I'm one of these chicks that can't go to the grocery store without makeup.
Right.
And heels.
I went to the grocery store this morning without makeup or heels. So I think that makes me femme of center. Yeah, I mean, white atheist, all sorts of other things.
So you are atheist?
Yeah. And I'm sure other labels will come up as we go and they change all the time. I like to think of it. There was this change in computers a while back from using folders for everything to using tags. And I like to think of identity labels that way. It doesn't work to slip us into folders. It does work when you have tags that can build on each other and come and go.
Uh-huh.
So that makes me more open to labels. I'm happy to just slap on labels and I don't worry about it as much.
More like Post-it notes.
Right. I can take them off anytime. It's just a little bit of sticky residue.
Ew. That'll come off with a little acetone. Oh God, where are we, love?
Oh, who knows? Did we answer Ariadne's question?
Well, we did each of who we are, which we sort of did, and then her question was the similarities and differences.
Similarities and differences.
Well, actually, I want to tell a quick little story here about something that I thought was a similarity, and then I thought was a difference, but maybe in fact be a similarity.
Sure.
And so here's a funny thing. One of the things, this even pings back to what the podcast is about. One of the things the podcast is about is that we don't necessarily know what we're talking about.
Speak for yourself.
Hush up, girl. It's abundantly obvious to anyone who has stayed listening as long as they have to this point. And I think it's really important to know that you walk in the world not knowing what's going on.
That's right.
I think it's really important. And I think when you get into issues around gender, it becomes extremely important because nobody knows what's going on, and frankly, no one ever has.
Right.
What we're finding out is what we think we knew about, we didn't know about.
Yeah.
And that's going to be one of the themes here going straight on through.
Oh, geez, we've got hours on that topic.
Exactly. And it means that we're going to be making mistakes and we're going to be saying stupid shit. We're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Listeners are going to write in and say, hey, you twats, you had this all backward. You're talking about my identity and you got it ass for nuts.
Right. And sometimes they'll be mad at us.
And we have to accept the fact that we and everybody are going to get it wrong. So here's the funny story, which is that when you and I first met, everything I read and everything, I assumed you were a trans woman.
Yeah, I am a trans woman.
Well, you never actually said that.
Oh.
You never actually said that at that point. And I didn't realize that you hadn't said that until we got to, I think, the point that we actually were corresponding for a while. I think it had been some time. I think it was before we started Twined Fragments. And you said something and I realized my heart hit the pavement because it suddenly dawned on me that I had been she, her in you, and I had never asked your pronouns. And it dawned on me that you were probably non-binary. Something you said led me to conclude that, on the contrary,
I think I said I'm non-binary.
Yeah, well, that could have been, which I read to be that you're not a woman. I'm like, right. I totally stuck my foot in my mouth.
You didn't.
That. And, well, I didn't know, so I'm getting all profuse. Oh, my God, Mia, I am so sorry if I've been misgendering you this whole time. I am just ashamed.
Yeah.
Because I made an assumption.
Yeah, actually, you didn't. If you look back through those early writings, I do several times call myself a trans woman and also give my pronouns. So you may not have remembered the exact lines, but it is entirely fair that you picked it up from there. And then I shocked you by also calling myself non-binary.
And for those of you who are tuned in and are not already familiar with all of the discussions going on in Transland over gender identity, welcome to our world, and this is going to get really interesting. Anyway, what I wanted to underscore was just that you make assumptions without even realizing you're making assumptions, and sometimes those assumptions have consequences, and all you can say is, hey, people, I'm sorry, I'll do better.
Sure. I mean, I think the other part of that is that identities aren't simple. I consider myself both a trans woman with an emphasis on the woman part and also not entirely binary feeling. So I think both of those can be true, and that's part of life.
So that's something that's different. I consider myself super binary female.
Yeah. And I will fight anybody that misgenders me, but it doesn't mean I feel simple about being binary.
And I'll watch you fight and take bets.
Well, I've lost a lot of muscle mass in the last 2 years. And I can tell you I was not a good fighter before. And I expect I'm worse now. So I'm going to try not to get into it.
Yeah, well, you might not have the muscle mass, but I bet you're nastier than you were back then.
That could be. That could be.
What other similarities and differences? I'm still trying to get Ariadne her answer. I know it's hopeless, but let's keep trying.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we have some differences in the language we use, and I think that comes out of language changing over time. Transsexual has mostly fallen out of favor, and this idea
Yeah.
of formerly transgender or formerly transsexual is something that I hadn't heard until very recently, because it's not really a phrase we use anymore. But I'm
So
fascinated by it.
you do identify as trans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah, actually, I go back and forth on it. It was like your sticky note labels.
Sure.
So I put trans on, for example, for the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise our conversation makes no sense.
Right.
So in the contents, in a professional context, yeah, I say I'm a trans woman because otherwise we're not talking about anything.
Right.
But when I talk about how I feel in myself, yeah, I don't consider myself trans. I consider, and this was definitely the ethos of the day when I
Sure.
transitioned, was that what transgender, or then what we call transsexual, which is applied specifically to medical transition,
Right.
is that you were transsexual from the point that you got your diagnosis to the point that you literally specifically finished transition. There was a very clear marker for that at that time.
Right. And transition was all or nothing, and it all happens within what, 1 year? 2 years?
The minimum was 1 year.
Okay.
And I did it in 12 months and 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, and there were reasons for that.
Right.
One of them being that being in transition at that time was fucking dangerous.
Right.
Because you couldn't get your documents until you had had surgery, which meant that you were always open to really. I mean, if you got stopped by a cop, you were in serious trouble.
Right.
In that day, you always carried your doctor's letters. You went around with a letter from your endocrinologist and a letter from your psychologist explaining what you were, with the diagnostic codes and everything. And that would keep you from getting hurt sometimes.
Yeah. Wow. And now, for me, I couldn't say exactly when my transition started. I mean, there's the moment that I first called myself trans. That's like 2.5 years ago. But I had started changing my pronouns before that, and I had started changing my clothes even longer ago. And then I changed my name about 2 years ago, and then I started hormones a little less than 2. And I don't know where is the start, and I couldn't tell you also where it would end. I don't see an end to transition. It just feels a bit nebulous.
That's really how things are now.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways that's much more real, because as a number of people have said, everyone is always in transition.
Right.
I finished quote unquote medical transition Christmas of 1989.
Right.
But I am not the person I was the week after that.
Sure.
I'm very different to who I was then. My understanding of womanhood is different to what it was then.
Right.
My understanding of myself was different.
Sure. But at that point, you consider yourself formerly transsexual.
That is very exactly the term we used.
Yeah.
It was made very clear that we were now, quote unquote, just normal women. One of the things we're going to be getting into in this podcast as we go forward in the weeks is the incredible fluidity there is in the language right now.
Sure.
So you have people that are saying that, we don't say transsexual anymore. We say transgender, that, and then you have other people, including transsexuals, who are saying, nuh-uh.
Right.
No, those are two different things. They're saying transgender is this vague umbrella term that covers all this other shit that we are not. And, we are, quote unquote, true transsexuals, meaning we take hormones, we go under the knife, we change everything and we move on.
Yeah, true trans.
I don't want to talk shit about the vast majority of people who identify as transsexual and are not true trans.
Right, okay? For sure.
They are men and women who have a particular view, which I myself am a product of.
Right.
About what it means to go through this process. True trans is something else. True scum is something we'll talk about. True scum take what I just described and extend it to applying to everyone else and saying you only get to be trans if you fit this pattern.
Right. So
and that's really not okay.
Right. Telling other people how to identify or how not to.
Well, it's no different to a certain class of feminists that says you can't be a woman because I say so.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, excuse me.
Yeah, there's something else interesting in there with the shifting language that has to do with the difference between umbrella terms and personal identities, where the term trans is both. So I can, and that's true in a lot of ways. Genderqueer would be another one. I feel like that's an umbrella term for, I feel like it could cover drag queens. It could cover just a huge range. But as personal identities, it may be much more narrow who actually identifies with the term. So that's always interesting, just that difference between what we use sort of as political umbrellas and what we use personally.
Right. So there are keywords in all this. So if you hear someone describe themselves as formerly transgender, or as a former transsexual, or as a man or woman of trans history, or a man or woman, what's the other one?
I don't think I had heard that one.
Yeah, that is one that is used. Those are all clues that you're talking to someone who considers themselves, quote unquote, a normal man or woman who once went through this process.
Right.
And I'm, by the way, putting normal in quotes there because I realize that's a loaded term, because I'm the one who wrote a paper on why that's a loaded term. And you can find that too if you look at my work.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like that's the origin of of queer theory. The origin of queer theory is sort of this, we can't use the word normal anymore because we don't know what it means. Yeah. And usually it means a power dynamic that is.
That's exactly what it means. It means us, not you.
Right.
Is all it ever means. Oh, okay. We've gone way down the primrose path. What were we talking about?
Well, I think we did our best to answer the question.
Oh, similarities and differences.
Yeah.
Do we have any similarities?
We're both trans women?
I don't know. You haven't quite decided if you're a female yet, have you?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay then. See, I don't know what genderqueer is.
Yeah. Well, so to me, there's this problem where, and I think it's a little bit easier to talk about with sexuality, where we talk about sort of as though there's a simple continuum, right? And just straight on one end and gay on the other end. I want to know at what point along that line, moving from the edge, at what point do you become bisexual? And in my mind, it's very broad. As soon as I start moving in from the edge, I am bisexual, whether or not I ever make it anywhere near the middle.
Right.
And again, this is an oversimplification. It's probably not a simple straight line. But I consider myself bisexual because I am not exactly at the edge. And I think other people use the term bisexual to mean I am exactly in the middle. So I think about genderqueer the same way. I am definitely a woman, but I don't see myself being exactly at an edge. I see myself being somewhere on the woman side of things.
Shading toward the pink.
Exactly. I am definitely woman of center. And in my mind, this is one of the reasons we get this this trope that comes up over and over again of like bisexuality is just a stepping stone to gay, and genderqueer is just a stepping stone to transition. And in my mind, I think, well, yeah, the genderqueers who struggle the hardest are the ones that are on the wrong side, even if they are still genderqueer. And the bisexuals who struggle the most are the ones who are seen on the wrong side, right?
Uh-huh.
So you are, if you're struggling with your gender, transition may be useful, whether or not you consider yourself binary.
Okay, that's a really good way of thinking about it. I'll just say, this goes with being older generation. One thing we haven't talked about is the fact that I only entered the trans community, what is it, a year and a half ago?
That's right. So I'm older than you.
And in terms of, bandying about terms like genderqueer and queer theory and all the rest of the gobbledygook, you're way, way, way older than I am. Because I lived as a cis woman with no awareness of or contact with anything trans,
right?
For 27 years.
Yeah.
And I sort of popped out into the trans universe June of 2016.
Right. And I had both Caitlyn Jenner and Laverne Cox in my living room before I transitioned.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think what sort of got my attention was the whole Jenner thing, and only because you couldn't get away from it.
Sure.
I can assure you I did my best to ignore it.
Yeah, I was going to say I was happier to have one of those in my living room than the other one.
Well, no, I just mean having transgender in the news was something that I tuned out because I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it.
You failed at that.
I mean, and I suppose that sounds horrible now.
Yeah.
But I paid a very high price for my anonymity.
Yeah.
After I transitioned, I went into the woodwork, as we called it, meaning that I left all my friends and family behind. And moved to a different city with a different name and never told anybody.
And that was required by the doctors at that point. Is that right?
It wasn't required by the doctors per se, but it was the expectation. I mean, there were, people around. Kate Bornstein, for example, I think was around.
Sure.
About that time or shortly thereafter, and these people were disparagingly called professional transsexual, actually professional T word, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yep. Which is a word she uses, Kate Bornstein.
But what I'm saying is that in terms of those of us who were quote unquote mainstream transsexuals, whatever that means, but in this day it meant that we planned to become normal women and disappear into society. We called it assimilation.
Right.
Those of us who planned to assimilate, something like a professional tranny was just the most horrible thing to be out there because we didn't want cis people to know about us.
Right. Their visibility makes it more dangerous.
We want to be invisible, and to do that, you have to do things like what I did. And
and then there's a reason for that. There's a reason to be invisible. That's required for your safety. At that point,
it was then.
Yeah,
and and I have debates with friends of mine as to whether it still is.
Right. I don't think that's a settled question.
Mm-mm. So the point of all that was, that I reappeared. Yes, you are older than I am in terms of understanding the nuances and language, and progressive development of understanding around gender and queerness.
Right.
Because for the last quarter century, I've been effectively a white cis woman living in suburbia.
Right.
With no clue as to what was going on. Okay, I wasn't in suburbia, but anyway.
Yeah.
And avoided hearing about or thinking about it. I mean, if the T word came up, I just turn around and go the other way because that has nothing to do with me.
Sure. No, it's interesting for me to think about because I have some sense that I feel like that would be terrible and some sense that I'm jealous of it. And that's complex.
It's both. And it continues to be both. Since I did reappear in the trans world, obviously I've moved rather quickly because it's now my profession. I am now a professional tranny. Thank you very much. But as Washington is a pen name.
Right.
I am still completely woodworked in my private life. I I do not want anybody to know. I'm not walking around with the "I survived testosterone" T-shirt on.
Right.
And I'm not saying I never will, but I have a very difficult time imagining myself doing so.
Right.
I'm just too frightened,
right,
to be honest.
Well, and I feel in some ways similar. I mean, it's interesting. I am not word worked in my private life, but when I leave the house, I am. I mean, if I'm interacting with strangers, I don't tell them right away. I don't make a point of it. I don't wear shirts that say it. So I feel like in most public situations, I am in some way woodworked. Which is another big thing to get into, passing and
the passing discussion. We'll have to do about 17 episodes on stealth and passing.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about a can of worms.
Uh-huh. Well, it sounds like we have a lot of other episodes to get to.
We do.
All right. Do you want to get into this?
Mia, we're reading from chapter 2 of Twined Fragments.
Great.
Which you can find Twined Fragments. Again, go to the website, aliceandmia.com, or you can just Google Twined Fragments. This is chapter 2, Shifting Nouns. And to explain what's going on here, this is me and Mia flipping back and forth. Each of us pulls a little nugget out of our memory, and then and sort of encapsulates that, and then the other one will take that and use that to trigger a memory of her own, and we go back and forth and back and forth. Chapter 2, Shifting Nouns, Mia.
I'm standing here in a group of women, all strangers. They're warm and kind, inclusive, as though I'm any other woman. Am I? I've seen myself in the mirror. I find me disorienting. What do they see that I don't? Why aren't they laughing at me? Mia, 2017, 34, passing.
So that was just, a year or two? That was that was this year.
That was this year. That was earlier this year.
I thought you were 35.
I am. It turns out some birthdays happen in the middle of the year.
Unlike mine. You find you disorienting. I was thinking that, mirrors seem to have two modes, dysphoria and euphoria.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a trans thing. I think that's a woman thing.
I think that's right. I mean, I think there is definitely a shift. I remember the moment when I was first trying on clothes and realized that I wasn't trying on a gender anymore. That when I was looking in the mirror, I was just looking to see whether the clothes fit. And there is a shift there. There's a shift that happens.
Yeah.
I can finally hate my body for the normal reasons.
Oh, God. You go, girl. Yeah, I know. Oh, that's what I'm thinking. It's like you can look in and this can happen in very short succession on the same day as you look in the mirror and you go, hey, girl.
Yeah.
And then you can look in that same mirror and you just see the dude in a dress.
Yeah. That fucking mirror.
Even decades later. It's
oh, that's depressing. Now you've got me depressed.
Well, no. Again, I don't think cis women are seeing dude in a dress, but they're definitely being dysmorphic. They're seeing, I mean, look at anorexia. They're not seeing themselves as they actually are. Yeah. They're seeing an imagined, reinterpreted, hideous version.
Alice, give me some optimism. Repeat after me. It gets better.
Oh, honey. It gets better. It's already getting better. Now,
great.
Time runs. I will tell you one thing from where I sit, okay? And this isn't to feel bad about, but it's something to be aware of. Is time runs in one direction.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be hotter than you are now, girl. So go for it.
There's a thing. I've always wanted to be older until now. This is the first time in my life where I didn't want to be older than I am.
That's because you've realized you're not a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Guys get to be distinguished.
Uh-huh.
We get to be
Well,
we get to be unfuckable.
I'm okay with that. Can I be Jame Duty Dench?
She is my idol.
I mean, yeah. Kate Bornstein, I would go for that.
She's not my type. Shall I read?
Sure.
His shocked disbelief is so comical that I cannot help but laugh. He shakes his head, turns away, turns back, his mouth agape, his expression searching, confused. I have to repeat myself before comprehension finally dawns. Oh, well, I always knew something was off. Allison, 2017, 60, passing bullshit.
Who is this? I mean, you don't have to give us a name. This is somebody?
This is a guy.
Yeah.
And it was this is earlier this year when I was sort of challenging myself on whether or not to be out.
Okay.
Which I've way pulled back from, as you can tell by our earlier discussion.
Right.
But there was a point at which I was thinking, maybe I want to be out. And I was in a situation where there were people that didn't know I was trans.
Okay.
And it was a safe situation where I didn't have to worry about having anything leak back into my real life.
Okay.
So I told this guy that I was trans. And he absolutely shit a muffin.
And then claimed it was he expected it.
I mean, it was just hysterical. I mean, and this is how it is, right?
Yeah.
Is they just can't believe it because, because unless you've actually, I mean, even those of us who have been through this, who know dozens and dozens of people who've been through this, you see the before and after pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't seem possible.
That, and I think our society has gone out of the way to insist that trans women are just bad drag queens.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what people expect to see. And when they just see women, it's confusing.
Yeah. I mean, the vast majority of us come out just looking like women, which is what we are. So and then they do this thing. It's called the knowledge effect. If you're into cognitive science at all, it's called the knowledge effect. You can look it up. And this is the thing where it is impossible to imagine not knowing what you know.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating.
And this is why your friends cannot tell you whether or not you're passing.
Right. Yeah, I actually had to remind people of that early on. People would sort of out me just assuming that I wasn't passing. And I had to be like,
quit that shit.
Yeah. I don't pass to you because but I do pass other places. So
right. Exactly. And by the way, people, don't ever out anybody, no matter what you think, even if you think it's okay. Just don't do it. You never know how much you're going to be endangering someone, and you cannot unring that bell. You can ruin somebody's life without even knowing you're doing it. So don't fucking do it. Even
if we are out in other contexts, that does not mean we want to be out in every context.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just not safe to do so. So it's not your information. Don't do it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Here's one. Speaking of how we feel before and after.
Mm-hmm.
I spend years convincing myself that I'm too masculine, too bulky, too something. Transition is for beautiful femme twinks, not Indiana farm boys. I grow a beard to pass as a man, but my clothes transition without me until my wardrobe looks like the women's section at Goodwill or Target.
Mm-hmm.
Probably both.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually I break. You shaved. We celebrate with a late night snack at Breakfast King. And thank you, ladies. Come back soon. That blew my mind. For the next 6 months, my gender is on shuffle. One person calls me sir, the next says ma'am, in the space of minutes. I noticed that Allison was only a year younger. Mia, 2015, 33.
Yeah, that's one of the similarities for Ariadne, if you're still listening. is, I was 32, you were 33.
That's right.
And it's one of those interesting things because we were right around the same age.
You were also 4. So that's different.
That is different.
So there we've got the similarities and the differences. Everything she wanted in that one.
in one nice tidy burrito. Yeah, you mentioned the beard. I have a friend who calls that the trans feminine beard of shame.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was the last thing to go. That was the final thing to go.
I know a girl who just shaved recently, finally.
Uh-huh.
And I know another girl who's just trying to get up the nerve to. And it's this weird thing because, a lot of guys don't wear beards.
Sure.
But it seems to be extremely common for trans women to wear beards, at least during sort of the final lap before they finally give up on it.
Yeah, there was really a sense to me that I would be outing myself if I didn't have the beard, and I didn't even know, I didn't even identify clearly at that point, but still it felt dangerous.
It's funny you should say that. This girl, as I said, is just getting up the nerve to shave her beard. I'm going to call her B, because I don't want to out her. B, that's the thing she told me. She said it's hysterical because I know that most of the men around me don't have beards, but I feel like if I shave mine, everybody's going to know I'm trans.
Yep. Yeah. And at that point, I was wearing mostly clothes from the women's section, like I said. So it really did feel like I would be trans if I didn't have the beard. That was something that was in my head, and I.
God, it's just the ringer we put ourselves through. it's and there's all this cognitive dissonance because, for Christ's sake, girl, you're dressing as a woman and going to work. You've got clear nail polish on. Both your ears are pierced, and you color your hair, and you think a beard is going to fix this for you?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Looking back, I realized that at that point, people saw me as trans more than they do now, and it was because of the beard. It was because the beard showed them. The beard made me their idea of a bad drag queen.
Yeah.
So there I was, being more trans than I ever was after I came out.
Isn't that a hoot? Isn't that a hoot?
You can say hoot. I think it's depressing.
Well, it doesn't have to be depressing because it's one of those really consistent things that I want to say probably most trans women do that or something very similar.
I think that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, you shaved.
I shaved.
Yeah. Do you still shave? That's none of my business.
I do. I have also had some laser hair removal, but not enough that I'm entirely done shaving.
Has it gotten better?
Much better. Oh, drastically better.
Of all the dysphoria-inducing things, what's the worst?
Oh, that's up there, I suppose. But also, you just have days. Like, you can't blame it on any one thing. It's just, you have those dysphoria days.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what triggers them.
So I will tell you one thing that gets better.
Mm-hmm.
There's this funny thing that happens with the innervation of tissues.
Mm-hmm.
When nerves that were doing one thing are no longer doing that thing, and you can look this up in brain science for those of you who want to get geeky about it. The nervous system cuts loose sets of neurons in the mind that are no longer being used for something.
Okay.
So, for example, if you lose an arm, you'll start out with getting phantom limb pain. You'll feel nervous sensations from where the arm used to be.
Right.
But in time, you'll lose all of that, and the neurons that were doing the arm will get appropriated to do something more useful. And eventually what happens is you can't remember what it felt like to have the arm.
Right.
It's really interesting. This happens with any kind of surgery that would do something like that, if you get my drift.
Right. I was going to say, is arm a euphemism in this case?
It is.
Great.
I actually cannot in any way, shape, or form remember what it was like to have any of that.
Yeah.
I just can't. I cannot imagine what it would be like not to have labia, for example. That would just be weird to not have labia. That would just be insane.
Yeah, it is weird. I can tell you from experience, it's weird.
And the other thing is that the whole facial hair thing is the same. I cannot remember what that felt like.
Right.
And it just seems very strange to imagine pokey things sticking out of your lips. Even though I can objectively remember, everything I had to go through to have that taken care of. And for those of you who have never had electrolysis, you should all really give this a try at least once. It's fun.
No. I have heard nothing but pain.
Well, it's fun in the sense that if you like having needles stuck into your face and hot electricity zapped through it.
So you said you're submissive.
I am actually. You want to talk about that?
I don't know if we have time right now.
Okay, moving right along.
You
talked in your last fragment about your gender being on shuffle.
Yeah.
Which I remember that. So here you go. This is mine. I approach the cashier and she smiles. Did you find everything you were looking for, sir?
Oof.
Worse than the catcalls, her politeness takes the life out of me. I am wearing a dress, jewelry, long styled hair, varnished nails, lipstick, and I'm holding a bra and panties. I fight back the estrogen-enhanced tears. In a minute, I must go back out to face the world. Avoiding eye contact and painfully conscious of my voice, I mumble, I pay, and scurry away. I tense as I pass the floor manager on my way to the door. He smiles and I am caught off guard. Thanks for shopping with us, ma'am. Men have a different smile for women. I can breathe again.
Yeah.
Allison, 1989, 32.
That's powerful. That's every day at the beginning of transition.
Well, at the very beginning, nobody's buying into it, right? And you're just like this is hopeless. We all sort of put our money on the hormones and say, God, help me, please. And then if you're lucky, because not everybody gets this. Not everybody does. Some people have unfortunate physical situations.
Yeah.
But if you are one of the fortunate ones, then you're, like you say, you get to this, God, it seems like it lasts only a couple of weeks. Maybe it's longer. But it's like there's these 2 weeks where you just kind of flipping back and forth minute to minute. And then very quickly it settles in and everything is the way about. And honey, you're through the looking glass.
I remember that as months. But yeah, it is. And it is shocking how, and it was interesting to me that, the day I shaved my beard, I was gendered right that night.
It's just so weird to hear you say that. I cannot imagine it.
That was fucking weird. But at that point it was only like, okay, but then it only happened 15% of the time, right? I got lucky that first night, but then it wasn't consistent. But then it was interesting. It was like you get a new coat and it goes up to 25%. You get new shoes and it goes up even a little bit more. And you're just thinking, this is fucking crazy.
But it's not the shoes or the coat, is it?
I have no idea. I think sometimes it is. We do a lot of gendering people based on just really surface things. And then it was 3 months before I started actually taking hormones. And then another... Oh,
this is before you started HRT?
That's before I started hormones.
Oh, damn, girl, you are a lucky one.
Yeah. Yeah, which just blew my mind because I just saw this weird-looking boy.
Yeah, sure you did. There's that mirror again.
Yeah. All right, we've got one more here. I spend the weekend with family in Moab. Everyone doing their best, maybe. It's not enough. It's too much. I hide in my room through dinner. The feeling isn't anger. It's never anger. It's just this overwhelming shame and embarrassment and fear and self-loathing. And the apologies make it worse. Everyone is defensive. It's hard, you know? I know. Johnny slides in beside me. Hey, sis. Mia, 2017.
I remember when I first read this one, when we were still writing the chapter, and I fucking teared up when I read it. I really did.
Well, I fucking teared up while it was happening.
It's just like those little moments of grace from someone who actually gets it.
Yeah. And I ended up writing a longer article about this when I felt like Johnny in that moment helped me understand what to ask for from people, like how to say, this is what helps. And I thanked him for that. And he said, oh no, you said that in one of your earlier articles. I was just doing what you told me.
Oh my God, no way. Really?
Yeah. And I think I had said something maybe that sort of got to it before, but I didn't understand it until he did it. And he did it right. And it was, that moment was so special.
Huh. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And that's, you know, I mean, that's all any of us ever really wants.
Yeah.
Is just that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, instead of arguing with me about it, couldn't you just make it okay?
Yeah.
Well, so we're going to be reading this in each of the pods. We'll do a reading like this and discuss it. But that's it for today's reading. And you can, again, follow Twined Fragments.
Just Google Twined Fragments and you'll find it.
Well, Mia, I guess that does it for this week.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking with us through this.
Even if you can't afford the dollar or euro or pound it costs to sign up, please go to patreon.com/AliceandMia and just click the follow link so that we can keep you up to date on what we're doing. And one last favor, we really need you to do the 5-star, thumbs up, like, subscribe.
Is that on Patreon or?
The 5-star thing is on iTunes. The click and subscribe is on YouTube. Follow us on SoundCloud. Whatever you're listening to this on, click the damn things. Click all of them. just click everything, okay? Listen, thank you all very much. Alice and Mia is written and hosted by Allison Washington and Miriam Suzanne. Our theme music is by Teacup Gorilla. Send your questions to pod@aliceandmia.com and go to aliceandmia.com for more info.
And I'll make sure to update that website with everything you need.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
listening.
Bye, Mia. Bye-bye.